What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Steep Stuff Podcast. I'm your host, James Lariello, and today I am so proud and excited to bring you guys one of my favorite episodes and one of the coolest, most inspiring humans I may have ever had on the podcast. Without further ado, I'm so excited to bring you the Queen of Pikes Peak, 8-time Pikes Peak Ascent winner and course record holder in a time of 2:24:58 set back in 2012, none other than Kim Dobson. Like I said, really exciting episode. Was super stoked to be able to bring this to you and have this conversation with Kim and talk all about her journey as an athlete over the years and just the dominance that she was able to bring to the sport, to become one of the greatest, if not the greatest, female uphill runner of all time, and just really exciting. So without further ado, I'm not going to ramble on for too long because I'm just so excited to bring this one to you. None other than Kim Dobson.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are live.
All right, Kim Dobson, welcome to the Steep Stuff Podcast. How you doing?
Hi, I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing awesome now that we finally connected and we got you on the pod. This is exciting.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So your name has come up so many times. I mean, you could say the Queen of Pikes Peak in more ways than one. Being the course record holder for the Ascent. Your time is just so crazy and you have so much history at that race. Most recently I just had a conversation with Mark Tatum. Big shout out to Mark. When we did a history of the Pikes Peak, we did basically a historical lesson or podcast, if you will, on the history of the race. And just like how much history you had with the race just kind of blew my mind. And you being one of the greatest female mountain runners of all time, it was like we had to have had you on. So it was great to finally meet you. If you wouldn't mind, introduce yourself and maybe talk a little bit about your background.
Okay. I'm Kim Dobson, and I currently live in Eagle with my husband, and we have 2 kids, 2 boys that are 7 and 10. So I guess I'll go back to the beginning. Growing up, I didn't play any formal sports, but I grew up in Colorado. So we cross-country skied and mountain biked, and my mom likes to run. So I would hop in local 5Ks and 10Ks, but that was about it for me until high school. And in high school, I started cross country, and I had a very mediocre freshman year, but I caught the running bug and was really inspired to work harder and see improvement. So I progressed every year through high school, but wasn't a standout high school runner. I think I was in the top 20 at the state meet my senior year in cross country. So I did well, but nothing amazing. And I went to college and chose not to run for any team or walk on. But say in college is when I developed the passion for running myself, just to escape dorm life and the craziness of college. I started going on long runs around Fort Collins, where I was going to college at CSU, and realizing how awesome it is to explore a new place by running. So I started to do longer runs on my own. And then my sophomore year, I figured, hey, I've been running a lot. I should try a marathon. So I hopped into a marathon called the Easy Street Marathon, which they no longer have, but it was a pretty awesome, just big loop around Fort Collins. So I went into that having no idea what I was doing, super naive. I just ran a lot, thought that was all I needed to do, and had such an awesome experience. It killed me like the marathon does, but I finished in 3:11 and I was like, oh, that's pretty good. And caught a little marathon bug in college. So then I ran Boston and Boulder back roads. But through college, it was just a passion. I had no idea how to train properly, eat properly. So I was pretty beat up after college and had a lot of injuries. My husband and I got married after college, and we started hiking 14ers together. And at that time, I wasn't running too much because I was pretty injured, but we were hiking a lot, and we caught the 14er bug, and we wanted to hike all the 14ers in Colorado together. So we pursued that for a couple years pretty passionately, and we would climb 30 14ers in a year. And I think that really transformed my body. It gave me the strength that I have had lacked in college. We had a little junky Honda Accord that couldn't make it up any Jeep roads. So we would have to start like 7 miles down the Jeep road and hike up. And he was he was pretty intense. He would let me stop one time, like to go to the bathroom, but he was like, we got to make the summit before the storms roll in. So it wasn't like fun hiking, but it was fun. It was type 2 fun hiking. We were going pretty hard and we wanted to make the summits, and we took it pretty hard. So, I think in 2009, at some point I started running again. My husband tried his first marathon and ran a sub-3, and it inspired me to try to run a marathon in sub-3. So I got back into running once my injuries had healed, and I added a little bit of structure into my running, just like a tempo once a week, logged my miles for the first time, did some of these basic things that I should have been doing before. And my husband and I ran a marathon together, and I broke 3. Then later I had another injury, so I wasn't running all summer, but we were doing a lot of that 14er hiking. And I told Corey, like, hey, I've heard of Pikes Peak Ascent. We should give it a try since we're hiking all the 14ers. My mom had done it a couple times growing up. So we just signed up in 2009 on a whim with no idea what to expect. I had this like old good luck shirt that I wore all the time. It was like an underwear pretty much with holes in it. We started out, and I started slow, and I just kind of paced it and started pushing harder and harder and passing people. And towards the end, I realized I was in second place and I was catching Megan Kimmel, and I just had such a magical experience. And I fell in love with uphill running at that race and realized like that was what my body was meant to do, and it suited me and my strengths. And I fell in love that day. So that was 2009, and I was second. And from there, yeah,
that is
just
so
became more and more. Yeah,
this is so crazy. So I'm going to preface this for the audience if they don't know. Your first time you ran 2:41:49. That is so fast.
Yes.
Oh my God.
It was like, I had no idea what times were. And that's the beauty of doing something for the first time. You have no expectation, and it's just like pure grit and pure joy. Yeah. So it exceeded my expectation.
Yeah. 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 What was it like when you got to the top and you're like, oh, I'm in second place? Like I'm on the podium? Like this is amazing.
Yeah.
Like, did you have any competitive thoughts on that day? Like, were you?
No.
So you're just like out there just to see what happens.
I hadn't really been running all summer because my knee was hurting. So I could only run up like 15% grade. So my husband was in med school at the time, and I was teaching. So we spent a month in Telluride, and I just bummed around town because I wasn't working at the time. And I would just run up Telluride Trail. Are you familiar with that?
I am.
like
Yeah. Steep. Yeah.
Okay. I love that road. I would just run up that because that was the only thing I could do. So I was running like 10 miles a week, but doing the hiking and the backpacking. So it blew my mind. It exceeded my expectations. And it was one of those magical days where you're not even tired. You know, you just feel so good.
Yeah.
You finish and you're like, that didn't even feel hard.
And I would imagine like 2009, that race, it was a big time for the race as well. Like lots of elites going out to do it. Was it life-changing in any way the first time that you got on the podium? Like, did you have sponsors reach out to you? Like, what was that? Or was it just like, okay, I got second place, I'm just going to go home now? Like, how did that work for you?
It's been so long. It's hard to remember, but it was life-changing. I remember Justin Mock reached out and wrote some articles. And I think Pearl Izumi sent me some shoes to try. And I definitely wanted to take it serious at that point. I'd spoken with some coaches and I didn't like sign or follow a specific coach, but I increased my own knowledge of training and I put in the structure and I started to develop more of an elite athlete mindset rather than just like passionate runner.
That's so crazy. So, all right. So help me connect the dots because you ran almost the same exact time in 2010, then coming back the next year.
Yes.
What was that like? Because I would imagine you would have been more, like you're saying, you're more structured. You changed training probably a little bit. Like, was that, I wouldn't say a letdown because you pretty much ran the same exact time. It's still insane. That was,
right.
Second.
It was like I think it was 13 seconds apart.
Yeah. It was like
my two times.
It was less than that. It was 2 seconds off. It was 51
Oh
versus
my
49.
gosh.
Yeah. That's crazy.
I couldn't be that consistent if I wanted to be.
That's so close. That's crazy.
Well, no, that's interesting. And I think it shows the power of the mindset. I had trained harder and I went into the race with more expectation. And it was like a world mountain running championship that year. So it was more competitive. And I think I thought I was going to be a lot faster. So that year, it felt so hard. Even though I ran the exact same time, it was like I struggled to get up there. I don't know why, if that was a physiological thing or more of a mental thing.
Could have been.
It was interesting.
Yeah, it could have been pressure. I mean, who knows?
I think it was.
Yeah. Are you one of those people? And I don't want to go off on too many side tangents because I want to stick to the story. But like, are you one of those people that's like in your heyday doing this race? Because I know this because Joe is so dialed with everything he does.
Yes.
Like pressure really matters on this mountain. Were you paying attention to things like that going into the race? Like, what are the little things that you were doing?
I was, and I think the pressure helps in the training because it keeps you disciplined and dialed in. But personally, for me, the pressure on race day doesn't help. That just spikes my heart rate, which is already spiking when you're running up a mountain.
I mean, sorry, I mean like barometric pressure for like the top of the
Oh, okay. Yeah. Gotcha. Sorry. What was your question about
like, were you like one of those people that were, because I know Joe and like most of these guys running it now, like they're even checking barometric pressure, like to see if it's a high, low day. Is it going to be harder at the top? Like things like that. Cause your body's changing as you go.
Yeah.
Were you one of those people that paid attention to that stuff or no?
No, not that. I definitely paid attention to my effort and my breathing, I would say were the two biggest pieces. I knew like when I got to the roundabout after that initial beginning, like I wanted to be so comfortable because people take off so fast and then they die at the roundabout and you're like, this race is long.
Yeah, you just ran a 5-minute mile, but you got a lot more race to go. Like,
yeah, like you pass people at the roundabout and they're gasping already. So I wanted it to feel like a jog to the roundabout. And then I would always pick it up so you can get into a good position, pick it up through the steep section by the cog and the double track. And then by the time I hit bar trail, I wanted to be in a relatively good position. But I had my mental check marks throughout the race to know what effort I should be exuding at that point. Wow. And I would look at splits, but I tried not to rely too much on those because if you're not hitting it, it can make you frustrated. If you're too fast, it can freak you out. So it was definitely more of an effort-based run for me.
That's crazy. All right, so I want to get back into the early years. I want to talk about 2011, the first year you took your first dub, and you went from 241 down to 234, which is pretty substantial. I mean, you're talking 6 or 7 minutes of a drop there. What was that like for you? Like, what was this? I mean, was it just any difference in a taper? Was it any difference just feeling great on the day? Like, any difference in training? Like what turned the corner for you to drop that time?
Yeah.
6 or 7 minutes.
It was the training. I think it was right before the 2010 race. I met Scott Elliott, who was a past champion, and he liked to take people under his wing and give them tips and help out. So between 2010 and 2011, he helped me out with training a lot. And we started to do like weekly intervals in Boulder in the spring on Linden Road, a really steep paved road. So it was continuing to put in more structure, like more workouts, shorter, high intensity bouts. I was doing more mileage, more vert. So it was taking all those pieces that go into a good training plan and elevating them a little bit. And I was starting to discover this nice little rhythm throughout the year that if I did kind of more road running in the winter to get some speed and some road races. And then in the spring, I started training for Mount Washington, which I usually raced in June. And I incorporated uphill treadmill running once a week and those high intense hill intervals. That would get me really fit for Mount Wash. And then after that, I would shift into higher elevation running. So it was kind of discovering like what worked throughout the year and having that periodization.
Yeah.
And then within that specific block, really nailing the hard workouts, jogging on the other days, and just doing all those things that.
Yeah. That's amazing.
That you read about, but you don't do.
That's amazing. You were able to put together kind of, it's just almost the pieces of the puzzle to make sure, to kind of to work for you. It's funny. So I just had Joe on the pod and we talked about, I glanced over Mount Washington, but we didn't go into it. Do you think maybe you can elaborate and talk a little bit about Mount Washington and just like how special of a race that is? And just, kind of talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, it's a really cool race. It's like the Pikes Peak of the Northeast. It's 7.6 miles on a paved road, although there is a section that's really nice dirt, so it's not all paved, but primarily paved, and it averages about 12% grade, which is insanely steep for a paved road. You can't find anything like that in Colorado.
No.
And it's a pretty big event, and their tree line is about 3,000, so you start in this thick New England forest, and then about halfway through the race, you pop above the tree line. And then it ends with a 30% pitch to get to the top. And it's just so brutal. It is a brutal race. I think it's harder than Pikes Peak in a lot of ways because you have to have like the quick turnover, but you're going up such a steep hill and there's just no break. There's no letting off. There's no downhill. There's no flat section. So I always felt like if I could get through that race, Pikes Peak is easy.
Oh my gosh. And the thing about Mount Washington too, like obviously for the elites, it's easy to get in, but for like your average person, isn't there like it's hard to get in, right? I've never even looked into it.
Yeah, I think there is a lottery.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What a cool historic race. Like I said, Joe and I were just chatting about it and I was like, man, maybe one day I could put that on the calendar.
Yeah, you should. I wish more people from Colorado could get over there to do it because it's a really sweet race. They start it with a cannon boom.
Really?
Yeah.
What's it like at the top?
It just has a lot of character.
Do they drive you guys down after you get to the top, or is it?
Yeah, they have buses, and it's notorious for having horrible weather. So there's been years where it's like 50-mile-an-hour winds. One year it ripped my bib. The wind was so strong. One year the fog was so dense you couldn't see more than 20 feet. Last time I did it, they had to cut it short in 2022. Because the top was totally iced over. So you have that to contend with too. It's crazy weather.
Super fun, especially June in that area of the country is just like, you would think it'd be nice and warm, but no.
Yeah. And it can be warm down in the valley, but then you go to the top of that mountain and it's just crazy.
Yeah. It's so funny. Cause like people, like, especially like people in Colorado, like I'm from the Northeast. So.
Oh, you are cool. Where are you from?
Pennsylvania area. Mm-hmm. So like for me, I don't know. Like I never grew up thinking there were like, I think you think of like Vermont or like the Poconos and Pennsylvania and stuff like that. But like I don't know, at least growing up, I never heard about Mount Washington. And so I came out here and like people compare mountains and stuff like that. I'm like, yeah. Joe was the one who really taught me a lot of that stuff. Cause there's race the cog race now, which is like a VK.
Yeah.
Like all kinds of stuff.
That looks pretty cool.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's 1 week after Mount Wash, I think. So they have like a combined race too, if you do both of them.
That's cool. Yeah. There's a lot of, it's nice to see the progression of the sport in the country where we're starting to get like more uphill, more vertical races, more VKs.
Yes.
Stuff like that.
Oh, I know. I wish that we had more. There used to be a really cool VK in Aspen that was part of the Audi Power 4.
Yeah.
That pretty much followed the America uphill track, but in the summer, it was awesome. They need to bring that back.
Listen, so one of my teammates on the La Sportiva team is Joe DeMore, and he used to work for Aspen Mountain.
Oh, cool.
And
Yeah.
every time I've seen him, I lobby, same thing. I'm like, can this
Yes.
race be a thing? Like, why not?
Yeah.
Well, it's weird to me because you kind of you somewhat kind of live in that greater area, if you will. Is Eagle Gypsum? That's not that far from there, is it? Is like,
Yeah, we're like 10 minutes apart.
okay, so it's all pretty close. But like, why is it that we don't have a summer race, but like we have all these like winter uphill races? Like,
Yeah,
what's the deal with that?
I know. That's such a good question.
I don't know.
You
Nobody
would think
does.
that, and the ski resorts are pretty, they're pretty stingy on what they allow. So you would think that they would be more open to it in the summer.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I want to I don't know. I've like looked around because I think like the next iteration of this podcast is hopefully one day going to be race directing, like starting like a race series or something
Okay.
under that.
Yeah.
umbrella. So keep an eye out. We're gonna do a proper VK.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, please do.
Yeah.
Well, America's uphill, right? You said
Something.
you hope to be there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we gotta do something. I'll be at is it the whatever the winter one is this year? I'll go. The one that's in March. I guess it's America's Uphill. That's
Yep. In Aspen. Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, I've been spending a lot of time on the incline recently, trying to get strong again.
Oh, cool. Yes, that's the best way. Do you do multiple repeats?
So what I've been doing is like I've been trying to like experiment with like double threshold and stuff like that, where I've been doing these like hard up to the first bailout where I'll do like pretty much a threshold and then drop down. I've done a lot of like full on incline repeats. You know what I'm noticing? I was actually on the incline yesterday and I was thinking about this is there's just nothing you can get to simulate that like middle steep section. Like you got to just do it, you know?
Yes.
So, if you go to the first or second bailout, you're really not getting the whole thing. You gotta just do the whole thing.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I'm so envious of that. I wish we had one out here. It's so unique. I mean, that's a one of a kind. Like,
It's a great stimulus. So let's get back to pikes because I'm so curious to see like. So later end of the block, now you're starting to get more specific for pikes. What were you doing for high altitude? Like, were you doing like 3-2-1s and stuff like that prior to these races? Like, what were you doing?
I think I did one of those. I always did a couple training runs on Mount Evans to get leg turnover. So I remember before 2012, I did like mile repeats from Summit Lake. Do you know where that is?
Yeah.
Up to the top. I think there's 4 or 5 miles. So I would run a mile. It's, I don't know, maybe like at that point, 6 or 7% grade. And I'd run it fast, like in the 6:30 pace. And then I'd stop and I'd wait. And then I'd run another mile. So I did mile repeats up. I did half mile repeats up. Sometimes they used to have, the COG would let you take a halfway ticket and then you'd run over to bar camp. So I would do that a few times and do like 3 minutes hard, 2 minutes easy, 3 minutes hard, 2 minutes easy. I do mile repeats on the top half of pikes. So the years I did better, it was definitely more focused on shorter intervals at a higher cadence. I think later in my Pikes Peak career, I started to get excited about running other 14ers fast, like doing little FKTs, which is really fun, but I don't think that was ideal training.
Yeah.
Kind of took too much out of me, and then I was lacking the leg turnover.
Interesting. Yeah, it's so interesting what you have to sacrifice for.
Yes.
You know, it's like that. It's that. I don't know. If you get too specific, then you're sacrificing what you could have in fitness for other things. It's like that kind of handoff.
Yes. You know? Right. And even sacrificing what's more fun. More fun to go try an FKT up a 14er or go 2 minutes on, 3 minutes off. Like, that's not as much fun, but it might prepare you more for the race.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. When were you, so you were what? So this would have been, you cracked the record on your fourth go. I think that's right. Yeah. Your fourth, what was it? 2012. So it would have been your fourth one from 2009. At what point in time were you starting to think about, okay, I can get the course record at this? I mean, because you were already pretty darn, I mean, you were within 10 minutes of striking distance in 2011. So at what point in time did you start thinking like, oh, I can do this?
Well, I think in 2011, I wanted to see what I could do, but I didn't want to put too much pressure on myself. I knew I was fitter than I was in the previous years. And I think Scott Elliott thought I could get the record. And then that year I ran like 30 seconds over. So it left me really hungry. And that winter, after Pikes Peak, I focused on road running, and I ran a road marathon in December and ran my PR. It was like right under 2:46. I was trying to qualify for the Olympic trials. And I made it by 4 seconds.
Wow. Oh my God.
Oh, I died. Because I could only run about 60 miles a week without getting injured. So I did not have the wheels to make it 26 miles. So I hit mile 20 and it got ugly. And I remember rounding the corner and seeing the clock, and it was like 2:45. And I'm like, I'm not going to make it. And just my arms and legs are flailing because I was so toast, but I made it by 4 seconds.
Oh my gosh.
So I think I had the leg turnover and the road running speed after that winter of 2011, 2012. And then that spring, I built into the intervals and the treadmill tempos that I always did for Mount Wash. And then at Mount Wash, I think I ran my best time that in June. So that was a good indication that I'm fitter than I was last year. And I think everything I was doing, I was surpassing what I had done the previous year. So I felt pretty confident going into 2012. I can't believe that was so long ago.
So
cool. And it is cool. We moved at that time. My husband was in med school. He graduated. So we moved to Grand Junction. So I was kind of a nomad that whole summer, and I wasn't teaching, and I just nailed the training. And I put in a lot of training, like a lot of 70-mile weeks with 15, 20,000 feet of vert with workouts. And I felt really good. So going into the race, I didn't want to put a number to anything, but I felt confident and I felt really fit. So I went by effort, like I always did. And when I would check my watch, it was like, oh my gosh. I remember getting to bar camp in 1:12 and thinking like, I'm either going to explode or this is going to be an amazing day. And then I think I ran the top half in about 1:12. So it was just the most magical, perfect day where I was sitting on that red line the entire time, but I never fell over it. And my headspace was really good. My body felt great. So I only looked at my watch a couple times because I wanted to stay focused. And I remember getting to the top and seeing the clock and that was not something I was expecting.
Yeah. I mean, it's so crazy.
I was like, I think I can be under 2:34, but I did not expect that time.
Well, it's just wild to me because like less than a handful of people have ever even cracked 2:20. Like it might even be less than that. I think it was.
Or 2:30 for women?
2:30. Yeah. Just 2:30.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's bananas. I mean, when you think about just like how fast I think it was Nenke might have cracked to 2:30.
She did. And I think Maud Matthews. Yeah.
But that's so, but like, think about like, you're talking the upper echelon of mountain runners in the world. Like that's rarefied air. In thin air.
Yeah. Yeah, it was neat. And at the time I was coaching Grand Junction's high school cross country team. And I remember talking to the kids about that and just saying like, work hard and you never know what's possible. Like this surpassed my wildest dreams. I never expected to run that time. And they had put like a $5,000 bonus on that time, like a few years before. So I ended up like making $8,000 from that run.
Nice.
And, I was 28, like that was a good chunk of change. So it was just a really magical day. I was really grateful for it.
Would you say the record day was more life-changing for you than the first run at it when you got second?
Yeah, I'd say the first run like started the journey, and that run, like, as amazing as it was also like a little curse too, because I never got close to that again. And I really had to work on my mindset because it felt like always a disappointment after that. Like, 2016, I doubled. So I ran like a 2:35 in the Ascent.
Yep.
And then the next day I ran the marathon and I ended up winning that, which was amazing because I suck at the downhill. But even that, like, what a great day. But there was a little part of me that's like, I didn't do well enough. Like 2:35, that's 10 minutes slower.
But so fast. Oh my God. Still.
So it did skew the perspective a little bit,
Yeah.
But but I was able to work through that.
Yeah. What was, I mean,
And just be grateful for what I can do.
maybe if you don't mind, like unpack that for the audience. Cause like, this is such an interesting, it's just an interesting conversation because yes, you achieved this mountaintop. You're still at the top of your game in a lot of ways. And you're still, I wouldn't say chasing the ghost of Kim Dobson, but like that was just such one particular, such a special day in history that like, it's gotta be hard, you know, trying to look at the person in the mirror and continue to chase that, you know?
Yeah. And I'm competitive with myself more than other people. And I love to push myself. So it made me just so hard on myself. It was like I didn't want to take a break that winter. I wanted to keep pushing and keep moving up in the fitness scale rather than like letting my body rest and recuperate like I should have that winter. So it did mess with my mind a little bit. And then I did get really fit again that next spring, but I had a pretty bad injury at the beginning of the summer of 2013 due to some of what we're just talking about, like just putting so much pressure on myself and pushing. So I was very injured that summer, just hiking a lot, and I still ran Pikes Peak, but it was much slower and
Still won.
I couldn't run on flat ground because I had probably a partially torn hamstring. Did something to it, glute hammy. But I remember hearing somebody say, like, what happened to Kim that year? She was like 17 minutes slower. So I was always hearing those things rather than like, you still were able to run and win, even though you're injured. You know, I always found like the part to improve on or to criticize myself on.
Yeah. It's got to be hard. You know, it's just something I wish I asked Joe as well. It's like, what is that like? It's got to be so hard because you're in such a public light. I mean, having won that race as many times as you have, like a lot of people know who you are. And that's got to be very hard as a person to be judged, right? Or to judge yourself.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And we want to do our best, but we can only do what our body's allowing us to do.
Right.
And that can really vary.
Especially on that mountain, like literally, I mean, you're talking, and this is with the barometric pressure. If you have a bad pressure day, like you could run 5 to 10 minutes slower, you know, just with it. I can't remember if it's low pressure or high pressure. I think it's low pressure makes sense.
Yeah. Which way is which? Yeah.
It screws me up. But yeah, I mean, if you have like kind of a backwards day, you could just, as you know, you'll run 5 to 10 minutes slower, and that's with no change to your physiology whatsoever. It's just, there's nothing you can do, you know? So
yes.
Let me ask you this. So this is something I've been thinking about a lot because you said you were in Grand Junction in your build up to the record year. Like, were you coming out? Oh no, not tall.
So yeah, so we moved there the beginning of the summer of 2012.
Okay.
I'm glad that you asked that actually, because I've thought about this before. So since I wasn't working, like I would go stay in town and it was like 100 degrees. And so I kind of feel like I got a little heat training while I was down there. And then I would go up to the mountains and like spend 3 days or a week up in the mountains training. And then I would go back. So I had this like neat back and forth, which I think helped me from, you know, if you spend too much time at elevation, that can be detrimental. So I think I just nailed that balance of high altitude, then going back to Grand Junction, which is like 4,000 feet elevation, and having that oxygen to take in and the heat to adapt to.
Yeah.
I think that balance worked out really well.
It sounds it too. I mean, it's that old moniker, like climb high, or what is it? Yeah, it's climb high and then sleep low or something like that.
Yeah, train low, sleep high.
Yeah. So it's, and and you can get that adaptation too with you know, with it being so hot. I don't know, it's the sauna effect too. It's going to increase your blood volume so you can get super fit.
Yeah.
It's just, I don't know. I love that physiology stuff, like how you can just optimize in as much ways.
And that's kind of the neat thing of just the repeating a race so many times is you can analyze the data and the variables, and we never know for sure what causes a great performance or a poor performance, but it's fun to play around with all that.
It is. And it's so interesting too, because so many of the world's best mountain runners have come out to throw down on this course. So there's other person's data too that you can look at and get an idea of it. Yeah, and you can look at the greats of the past and see like who's done what. It's wild. Were you coming out like, so it's just interesting to me because like, you know how Matt Carpenter was. He was very much train on the mountain, sleep on the mountain, live on the mountain kind of guy. Whereas like it doesn't,
Yeah.
like, it sounds like you were more going to other places and doing other things for that training
Mhm.
stimulus.
Yeah, I could look back and count in my running logs, but I probably ran like 6 times on Pikes Peak, like in 2011 and 2012. And I would do a couple on Mount Evans. I would run Grays and Torreys. We'd get down to Telluride Trail and I'd do repeats on that. Before in 2012, I did 3 repeats on Telluride Trail.
Yeah, Telluride, and it's so steep. That's a great one. Yeah,
Yeah, it's
yeah,
brutal.
yeah. If I'm thinking of the same one, I don't know if it's. I'm thinking of the one that's like close to. Oh man, like just by the ski resort. That's like a 4,000 something foot climb. Is that the one you're talking about too?
Um, Telluride Trail.
Yeah,
Yeah, it starts at the base of the gondola, and then it's not 4,000, it's like 1,800 feet of gain, and it goes to the top of
to the top of the
the
mountain. Okay, yeah.
gondola.
Okay,
Yeah, and you could keep going from there, but I would just do it's like I think it was 2.3 miles and 1,800 feet of gain.
that's awesome.
So I
Okay,
would do repeats on that, and then I'd ride the gondola down. So it was
smart.
pretty awesome. Go hard up and then ride down.
You're not the only person that does it. I've seen quite a few, like Michelino Sinceri is a great example. I've seen a lot of mountain runners do this where they'll, I guess, run hard up, gondola down,
Yeah.
hard up, gondola down.
Yeah,
It seems to work. I mean, it preserves the legs. So,
it does. It definitely does. Mhm.
yeah. Let me ask you this: for that year when you were doing your Olympic qualifier, what marathon did you run?
CIM.
Okay, sweet. That's
Yeah,
a
in
great
December.
course. Yeah,
Yes. Yeah, it really was.
super.
Oh,
Fun.
road marathons are brutal.
Yeah, not fun. Not fun.
Yeah. Have you ran many of them?
I've run one road marathon. We'll probably never do another one again. I think I'm more interested in
Yeah.
like the 10K. Like I think
Okay. Yeah.
the types of, like, I like to do like the mountain classic races, and like now
Yeah.
I'm dabbling more into the VKs and stuff like that. And I just feel like the 5K, 10K, probably more for me. The 10K kind of just translates really
Yeah.
well to those types of races.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, and then
The injury risk with a road marathon is so high.
it is, and it's like I feel like it's just that type of training is just it's just different to everything else, where you're
Yes.
really just destroying your body. It's so hard.
Yes. Yeah. And I think you could do it in the off season and run great on the trails in the summer, but I hopped in a trail race once during marathon training and it was a disaster because you're like a metronome and you can't get over rocks and you can't change for your ups and downs because your body just wants to get into that metronome
Yeah,
rhythm of a marathon. So I think you're doing the right thing with the 10K.
Let me ask you this, because this is actually related to kind of some of that. When you were getting ready for a lot of these ascents, like, were you in the gym a lot? Did you do anything for like strength and power, or is it mostly running for you?
Not back 2011, 2012. I did start a lunge matrix. I think I had seen Jay Johnson's lunge matrix routine. And when I had my knee injury, I was told I needed to strengthen. So I was doing like a lunge routine, but I didn't start doing heavier weights till, I don't know, like after I had the kids.
Yeah.
And I don't do a lot, but I do some.
Yeah.
And it's been really helpful. I think I have a hard time engaging my glutes, so I have to do a lot of supplemental activity to try to get them strong.
Interesting. Yeah, it's just interesting to me because you talk to so many dominant mountain runners, and some of the, like Joe told me, he's like, I'm in the gym sometimes, but not a lot. Like, whereas like I just talked to Cam Smith, he's he's a ski mountaineer, which is a little bit different, but he's also a stud mountain runner. And he's in the gym like 4 or 5 times a week. I was like, wow.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so it's just interesting to me to see the kind of the difference in different people that are at such a high level that some people are in, some people are not. So really quick, I want to fast forward a little bit to 2022 because I feel like out of all of the races that you've done, that one stands out to me because that was probably out of all of them, I would say, would you agree that maybe the most competitive with everyone?
Oh, for sure.
And you had a killer result. I mean, you took top 5 and what was probably the most stacked, one of probably 2 the most stacked ascents ever. So what was that like with all the Euros here and doing that whole thing?
Yeah. Okay. I guess I'll back up a little bit. The year before in 2021, I tried the Leadville 100.
Okay.
and I made it to like mile 60 and I had to drop because my hip and knee were a mess. But I feel like I never quite got my body back to 100% after that. Like, so I was training with a lot of injuries in 2022, particularly my right ankle. The tendons were really struggling. And it was okay in the spring, but right before Mount Wash, it really flared up. So the whole summer, I was running like 20 to 40 miles a week. I wasn't able to quite run as much as I wanted to. But I had a high level of fitness and I was doing some cross training to supplement. And I did some shorter races that were about an hour long. I did Mount Wash, the Rendezvous Hill Climb in Jackson
Great
Hole.
race. Love that race.
That is such a cool race.
Yeah.
Such a cool race. And Mount Baldy out in California.
Yep.
And Joe was at that one too. I think he was at all three of those. So I saw him a lot that summer. Mount Baldy's really cool too. If you ever get a chance to do that one out in California.
On the list.
And those all went really well, but I don't think I quite had the fitness for like the length of Pikes Peak. So I knew that going in. But I tried to block out the noise because there was a lot of it with the Golden Trail series. And I felt like I was doing a pretty good job. But the night before at the pre-race, like they introduced everybody. I remember my heart was racing so hard. I'm like, oh my gosh, I am not used to this environment because it's so intense.
Yeah.
And most mountain races are pretty like low key and they really drum it up. So I was nervous. I think I did the best I could of controlling those nerves. I think I paced it pretty well. I was hoping to run a little bit faster. I felt like based on all of my training times, I should have been under 240. And I think I ran 240.
240 flat. Yeah. Pretty close.
So I was hoping to be a little faster. Again, it goes back to that like slight disappointment because you know what you have done in the past. But when I zoom out and look at it with a different perspective, I feel like it was pretty good performance.
Oh my God. I mean, like as a fan of the sport, I would put that up there in top. I mean, while yes, it wasn't your fastest one, I would put that because it's just that stacked field was just so competitive.
Yeah.
That like you could, I mean, that's something you got to be proud of. I mean, top 5 in like, the most stacked women's field of like one of 2 of the most stacked women's field of all time at that race is crazy.
Yeah. It was neat to just see these runners. Like they're so talented.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
And to know who they are through social media and reading iRunFar race results and then get to line up with them was really cool.
Yeah, it's so crazy. I mean, we'll see what happens in the future with if they ever come back with the Golden Trail or not. But
yeah,
cool. So this kind of leads me into like your 2025 and like what plans have been and like how's training going. Like, do you plan on ever coming back to the race or like what are your future plans?
Oh man, I feel like the last 2 years have been almost a comical joke of like solving one injury and then moving on to the next one. After Pikes Peak, I had pretty bad patella tendonitis in my left knee and ankle tendonitis in my right foot. And, you know, and I'm 40 now. So, and I was warned that like the tendon properties change as you get older. And I'm like, oh, yes, you were right. It's hard because it's like they warm up and feel okay, but you are subtly compensating. So you're kind of developing poor biomechanics. You're getting weak in certain areas. So I definitely experienced a lot of that for a year. But I was starting to get better last fall and I signed up for the Blue Sky Trail Marathon in Fort Collins.
Yeah.
And I sprained my ankle really bad. Like the kind where it's like a balloon. And that was the 3rd time I've sprained that ankle. So I took a few months and got back into running January of this year. And my hip kind of was bothering me. And I sort of just ran through it like I shouldn't have. And then just developed like a lot of issues around my right hip. So I feel like right now I'm just trying to piece my body back together and not make any plans, but just get feeling well.
Yeah.
Again. And I had some various like prehab things I would do that I got away from when I would have little various injuries. So I'm trying to get back to those because in the past, those have worked to keep me injury free and hopefully put the puzzle back together and the body back together and then just see what I can do. But
That's cool. That's cool. No.
Just feeling well. And I think my mindset is shifting from performance to longevity. I don't want to jeopardize running because I love it so much for a race or for performance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Listen, I totally understand. You gotta, I mean, like that type of stuff first, you know, you have to make sure you're taking care of yourself, and, you know, and I think once you're, you know, I don't know, because it's got to be tough mentally too, to, you know, constantly, you know, I know, because every now and then I'll deal with an injury where I'm like calling my PT, like crying my eyes out, like, oh my God, what's wrong with me?
Yeah.
It's not fun, you know, so it's tough mentally to be in that place. But yeah, I look forward to when you're back to 100%, us getting back out of Pikes.
Yeah. And I hope to bump into you at America's Uphill this winter.
Absolutely.
Maybe the Vale Hill Climb. Have you done that one?
I've never done it, but my plan was to do that as well. I was going to do Summit for Life, and had a great build going, and then we went to Hawaii and I got bronchitis and like,
oh no,
completely missed like 2 weeks of training, and I was like,
yeah,
I probably could go, but I want to see, like, I'm one of those people that like, I want to be at 100, even though you're never at 100%. I like to try to be
I get it,
close as possible. So yeah, we'll see what happens. I don't know. I definitely Vale Hill Climb, and definitely, barring any freak illnesses, or injuries, I hope to be there.
Yes, totally. Yeah. They added a new uphill at Beaver Creek last year, which I did. I did their 3 winter uphills, and I hope to do those again. It's pretty awesome. It goes up. It's very similar to the Vale Hill Climb, like 2 miles, 2,000 feet of vert. But it's early January, so it's like barely light out when it starts. It just feels like carnage. It's freezing cold, it's snowing, and it's dark, but it's a lot of fun if you're looking for something else to do.
Got to do something in the winter. Yeah, my plan is like that. I think right now is like taking a step back, focusing on like, okay, let's get really, really fast in the 10K, and also at the same time try and like, I'm like got this weird idea of like, okay, I want to somehow set a PR in the 10K, but also set a PR in my incline. So let's see what happens. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
But well, you know, I'm kind of, I was like getting very experimental with my training, like trying to figure out what works and what doesn't. So,
me too. Yeah. That's a big part of it. Just having fun with it and experimenting.
Yeah. It's crazy. I've been diving into this uphill athlete book like a madman, trying to like take all these little tidbits and like changing different things. And then it's crazy because you see these.
Who writes that book?
You know what? He just followed me. I was like really excited too when he followed me. Hold on. I'll tell you right now.
Yeah. Like, I need to read that one.
So his name is Steve House. Steve House.
Okay.
He's the author of The Uphill Athlete, and 4-time author, apparently. But yeah, it's like a fat book, but it's got some stuff in there from like Killian and Killian's training and like just different people over the years and like what they've done. But it really breaks down, like for me, I think my thing was more better educating myself and like how much time we should be spending in like that lactate threshold and then zone 3 and then kind of layering that in with zone 4. And like, I already have like the aerobic components down, but it's more so, okay, exactly mathematically, like how much time should we be spending at these certain, zones to make this work.
Totally.
So, yeah. It's fun. I don't know.
I agree. Yeah. I always enjoyed that with Mount Wash training because it was a little bit more standardized, being on a treadmill or an uphill road. Like I just knew the numbers and I knew what percentage, of time I was going to be spending.
Yeah, seriously. And that's the thing too, is like the amount of, I used to do a ton of uphill running and I've almost like dialed it back now to where I'm doing more just like for working on economy, like a lot more flat stuff just to improve the economy and doing as much of that as possible now that I'm in the off season.
Yeah.
And then
I'm working on that a little bit more too. I used to just hammer the uphill so much and that worked for a while, but I feel like in the last few years, I did that for so long. I've developed like some weaknesses and I've overused some tendons. So I'm trying to just get back to like a good economy and running efficiency and not hammering the.
Who changed my mind was Jeff Kuno, because he was like, you know what, man? He's like, I was doing the same thing, and the one thing he said to me that he noticed in himself was that like he would get just take more lazy steps and like your form wouldn't be as efficient and things like that on the uphill. And I noticed that in myself, where it was like maybe I got too specific too early in last season's block, like the month
Yeah.
leading up to a lot of the Cirque Series races and stuff, and I was like,
Mm-hmm.
I could totally see that. That makes sense. So yeah, it's a fun little
Mm-hmm.
puzzle to solve, right?
Yeah, it is. Do you ever experiment with uphill pavement
No, I
for
probably should.
intervals?
No.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to keep accountable to good form and high cadence.
Yeah.
Hmm.
No, it's true because like especially it's hard on a trail because you like you said, you're stepping all over the
Yes.
place. It's not even.
Hmm.
Whereas like if you're on I mean, it makes a lot of sense that your economy would be significantly better if it is on a road. So,
Hmm.
yeah.
I think mentally we get on the trail and we relax a little bit, but on
Yeah.
the road you feel like, oh, here I am, I got to hammer it.
Got to be fast. It's
Mhm.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, all right. So we're almost we're getting close to an hour. So I just want to ask you a few ending questions. I'm very kind of curious on. The first one is who inspires you?
Ooh. Oh man. Is this in the running world or
Could be
in
anybody.
general?
Could be family, could be kids, could be anything.
Oh my goodness. Oh, there's so many people that inspire me, so that's a hard one. I'll pick my husband for the reason of he's just so good at giving his time to a lot of things. He's a doctor, so he'll work long hours at work and then he'll coach our son's sports team and then he'll leave on a Friday night and drive 3 hours to climb a mountain the next day and then he'll come home that night and he just goes and I think he knows what he values and he doesn't gravitate towards comfort, convenience. He just lives a full life.
Just gets out and does it. I love that.
Yeah.
Cool. It's cool. He inspires me too. That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. It's cool.
I don't know how people balance all that stuff. Like that's I just got
Yeah.
married this past summer and
Oh, congratulations.
thank you. Thank you. We don't have kids. We just have dogs. But still, I'm like,
Yeah.
God, I find myself so busy. I don't know how people with kids do it.
Yeah.
It's impressive.
I know it's a lot of things, but
Yeah.
it's all worth it and just got to keep your priorities and your values. Mhm.
That's true. Is it actually, this is one question I meant to ask you that I must have slipped my mind was with kids and training at such a high level, was that difficult for you or is that difficult for you?
I was lucky that I did not work when my kids were little. So I had children, but I had that space in my life. And when they were little and I was with them all the time, I think it almost helped my training. I had to logistically figure out when I was going to train, but then I was just so happy to be out the door and like have some freedom and some personal time that it helped the training, I felt like. And then just having such a deep purpose outside of running added a lot of balance to my life.
That's true too. I
Mhm.
feel like the balance kind of just takes the pressure off in a lot of ways. Yeah.
It did. Yeah, for sure. And then before races, if the kids are with me, like you're so distracted by them, you don't really have the time to get nervous.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Oh, that's cool. All right. What all right, so here's a fun one. What I'm
Okay.
curious, like what's like you're getting ready for a workout or like a hard effort. Like what's the song you're listening to?
Ooh, I got to pull up my playlist. So I don't listen to music outside, but when I work out inside, I do. And when I would do the Mount Washington treadmill tempos, I would always make like a playlist that really inspired me. Um, the last year I did it, that song Cloud. Do, do you know
I
that
don't
one?
know. I don't. At least-
Okay, let me look up who it is by. For some reason, that one really got me. I got to send you my playlist because I definitely had uphill treadmill playlists.
Wow, I got to put this one on my Spotify.
Yeah, I'll send you some
Oh,
of my favorites.
sweet, sweet. All right, cool. All right, so I'll look those up. Excited to see them.
Yeah.
All right, so I got the music. I had another one that I completely just slipped my mind of a question I was going to ask you. Sorry.
No, no worries.
Oh no, I got it because it was a good one. It was a good one. Okay, so as I don't know, being so like having like such a historical record and having achieved like so much in the sport, I'm curious to
Mhm.
see if you have any advice, whether it be for young women, young men that are just getting into the sport and are interested in
Yeah.
something like this.
Yeah. One very practical piece that I've told people, and I would tell myself if I was to go back when I was 25, is to invest in taking care of your body with professionals. I wish I had seen PTs or got an MRI for that crazy injury that I never did. I don't know why, but I just didn't seek out medical help or experts for those things. And I'm fairly injury prone. So it was a lot to navigate on my own. And I think if I could have gone back, I would have sought out help more. And then the other piece would be just staying true to why you're doing it and understanding why you're doing it and what's helping and hindering what you want to get out of running, especially with social media nowadays. That's a lot of pressure and it can be a negative thing for so many people. So figuring out how to navigate all those pieces, competition, social media, personal expectation, because it's a great sport and hopefully it'll be a lifelong sport, but there are some negative things that can creep in and steal the joy.
Yeah. That's a beautiful answer. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
So, all right, last one. Having been so accomplished, is there anything you still have left on the table that you want to do before whenever you call it good on running?
Yeah. No, it's a hard question because I think I still love to run and push myself, but I have to get my body on board. I do want to do America's Uphill. Every year, my husband and I say, let's get over there, but I want to make that happen this year.
Okay.
For sure.
All right. I'm really looking forward to getting to meet you out there. I'm stoked.
Yeah, that'd be really fun.
Yeah.
But I'm open to whatever my body allows. Mm-hmm.
Cool. Well, listen, I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It was an amazing conversation.
Thank you for having me. This was really fun.
Yeah, no, it was super cool. Well, thanks so much. And I will, I can't wait for this one to come out and for the world to hear it.
Yeah, sounds good. And I'll see you in March in Aspen.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Awesome. All right, I'm going to end our recording now.
Okay.
What'd you guys think? What a cool episode. I really look forward to having more conversations down the line with Kim as she looks to return to the sport in the next year or so, coming back from some injury stuff. So hoping to have more conversations with her, hopefully one face-to-face, which would be really exciting. I'd love to kind of do a format just like what we did with Joseph Gray on a video format to kind of document. I always like having these documented ones that you guys can go back to on YouTube, in video that, for the greats, for the super greats and the ones that really, really, really just stand out in the sport. Those are the ones that, we want to look back on in the years to come and just watch those episodes. It'd be kind of fun. So I genuinely, from the bottom of my heart, want to thank Kim so much for coming on the pod to have this discussion. She is on Instagram. If you guys want to go look her up, give her an Instagram follow. I'm not sure how she feels about that and having too many people reach out to her. But she is a fun follow and just, like I said, a really inspiring and interesting human in the sport, having achieved such great things, and just continues to. Also want to give a big shout out and a super big thank you to a friend of the podcast and amigo of mine, Mr. Jeff Cuno, who helped make this podcast possible by helping get me in touch with Kim. And so really means a lot to me. Thanks, Jeff. Guys, before we get going, if you enjoyed this episode and if we brought you any value, if you wouldn't mind not only sharing this on Instagram, that would mean a ton, but also if you wouldn't mind giving us a 5-star rating and review on Spotify, Apple, or YouTube. The goal of this podcast is to be able to get this out to the world and cover this great sport that we love so much. And we can't do that without your love and support and being able to get a 5-star rating and review. So that way this gets shared across platforms and becomes more discoverable to people that are interested in learning more about this genre of our sport. So guys, have a great rest of your week. Have a very Merry Christmas. Have a very happy holidays. Whatever you guys celebrate. Hope you enjoy it and hope it's an amazing one with your loved ones. We've got some fun stuff coming for you next week during the holiday week. So that would be fun. I don't want to give away too much, but I hope you guys enjoy it. Thank you so much.